When you think about Russia, you might envision a country whose economy is growing, thanks to the country's immense reserves of natural resources. Well, this is not far from the truth. The truth of the matter is that Russia is currently going through the worst economic crisis in its entire history. In this video, we will investigate what went wrong and what the implications of those mistakes are for the future of the nation. Sanctions imposed by the West have placed Russia in a precarious financial situation, one that is midway between a recession and a state of stagnation. Even while there are tried and true remedies for Russia's current ills, President Vladimir Putin's geostrategic and political decisions have rendered these more traditional economic techniques inapplicable. Because a weaker currency makes Russian businesses more competitive, both domestically and internationally, the recent collapse of the Russian ruble should have stimulated exports, domestic manufacturing, and foreign investment under normal market conditions, for example. This is because a weaker currency in Russia makes exports more competitive. But a significant recovery in any of these economic spheres is highly unlikely to occur, and this is not simply because of the sanctions. It is also owing to the deeply ingrained structural deficiencies of Putin's system. In particular, Russia does not have an economy that is diversified, a strong entrepreneurial class, the rule of law, or a stable business climate, all of which are necessary for a rapid economic turnaround to take place. In addition to this, the crisis has given the rise to anti-Western and isolationist rhetoric in Russia, all of which make the path to recovery for Moscow a great deal more challenging. The relentless flow of negative information regarding the economy has been brought about by Putin's pursuit of more imperial glory. As a result of a precipitous drop in the price of oil, state earnings are expected to decrease, which will leave less money for Vladimir Putin's ambitious military and social spending ambitions. Inflation is climbing to record highs, and record amounts of money are fleeing the country as a result of record-high capital flight. The sole piece of positive news is that Russia's budget is in balance, but that's about it. On the other hand, this is only possible because the government is now paying its expenses with rubles that are less expensive. When the Minister of Finance declares that he needs a backup budget since the projected budget for 2015 to 2017 is already out of date, this is never a good omen. It is based on the assumption that the price of a barrel of oil is $100. Although while Russia has spent decades debating the benefits of diversifying its economy away from its reliance on oil, the country has never bothered to put the concept into action. Because Russian domestic producers have relatively little to sell overseas, other than natural resources, they're unable to take advantage of a weakening currency. This leaves them unable to profit from a decreasing ruble. But even if access to international markets is not gained, a depreciating currency should, in theory, at least encourage an increase in domestic production. This is for the simple reason that Russian consumers will undoubtedly find imported items to be unaffordable. Moscow has lauded its food restrictions, which prohibit the import of meat, fruit, and vegetables from the European Union and the United States, as precisely such an opportunity to compel Russians to purchase locally grown goods. Nonetheless, Russian businessmen and women have been subjected to such an excessive amount of regulation and over-prosecution that the Russian entrepreneur has become a species in danger of extinction. In point of fact, an amnesty granted the previous year revealed that tens of thousands of business leaders were incarcerated for what were effectively fabricated charges. In spite of all the excitement, only a relatively small number of people were eventually allowed to go. Small and medium-sized businesses in Russia won't be able to lead the country out of recession due to government fiscal policy and a broken legal system. Therefore, it'll be up to Russia's large state corporations, which are the foundation of Putin's policy of state capitalism, to show the way out of the recession. But as a result of the sanctions, Russian enterprises and banks are focusing their attention on finding bailouts rather than new markets. Attending a signing ceremony together at the 2014 St. Petersburg International Economic Conference, where Russian President Vladimir Putin and Rosneft CEO Sergei Sechin. Igor Sechin, the chairman of the national oil corporation Rosneft, made a recent announcement, for instance, that what is good for Rosneft is good for Russia. He also made a request for $49 billion from the National Welfare Fund, which is one of the largest emergency funds in Russia. Rosneft will not receive as much as the finance minister of Putin's administration has already disclosed, but the collective demands for hard currency, from the central bank's interventions to defend the ruble to Putin's big spending plans for Crimea, are putting strong pressures on Russian financial reserves, which have already decreased by 13% this year. These demands come from the central bank's interventions to defend the ruble and from Putin's big spending plans from Crimea. There is a lot of spending going on in Moscow, and no one isn't sure when it'll end. Because of these sanctions and Russia's generally unfriendly environment for business, one final economic alternative that is available to most nations that are struggling, increased foreign direct investment, is virtually out of the question here. The Kremlin, on the other hand, has just lately indicated that they aim to make a bad situation even worse. A significant portion of Russia's foreign investments are made up of funds brought home by Russian citizens currently residing in other countries. Nonetheless, the Russian Ministry of Finance has mandated that foreign registered businesses that are either wholly owned at least 50% or potentially controlled at least 25% by Russian nationals pay taxes in Russia. After going to the trouble of moving their money out of the country, it is rather puzzling as to why Russian enterprises would then seek to make their gains from offshore subject to Russian taxes. Ironically, Putin's original plan was to use Russia's leadership of the G8 to spearhead an international campaign against tax havens and offshore banks. But because Russia is no longer a member of the G8, Putin is forced to pursue his campaign of de-offshorization all by himself, despite the fact that there is a slim likelihood that it'll be successful. With the country's numerous economic difficulties, Russia is in dire need of an intellectual discussion. Yet, Putin refuses to participate in this debate due to the fact that it would obviously disrupt the victorious narrative that is predominating in the Russian media. Instead, he's adopting a course of action that consists of being harsh and retaliatory. His most recent rant, which he gave at the Valdai Club, demonstrated that he's not in the mood to reach a compromise and that he continues to place blame on the United States for the problems facing Russia as well as the rest of the globe. Yet, as the Russian economy continues its slide into recession, the country's populace will inevitably confront their government with challenging questions. The Russian people have a long history of being calm in the face of adversity, but the current crisis is not comparable to the situation where foreign forces are camped outside of Leningrad, nor is it even somewhat comparable to the protracted ideological conflict that characterized the Cold War. This crisis, on the other hand, is typified by the so-called Rottenberg Statute, which states that the Russian people should bail out oligarchs whose villas have been seized in Italy. Putin is attempting to buy some more time here. There's always the possibility that he will seek further imperial grandeur in order to keep his popularity at its current level. Nonetheless, according to the economist Herbert Stein, who served as a chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Richard M. Nixon, if something cannot go on forever, it'll stop. The amount of money that Russia has stashed away is not limitless. The primary tried and true avenues for economic recovery, which include growing exports, expanding domestic manufacturing, and attracting more foreign investment, are currently not viable options. Other recommended solutions such as price controls or fixed exchange rates would only serve to make the situation much more difficult. Putin is the one responsible for creating this mess, and in the end, the president of Russia will be held accountable for providing some responses. And that's all for the video today. If you want to see more such videos, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.